Good morning student, welcome back here. I hope all are well. Now today your subject start economics and chapter number 2 sector of the Indian economy. Student, first of all you can see that and this book name is your subject book name understanding economic development. Okay student, your subject book name is Understanding Economic Development and Social Science textbook for class 10. And now today your start for sector of the Indian economy and this chapter number is 2. Now, what are sector? Student, any activity that the people engage in with an objectives to earn money, okay, is known as economic activity. People are engaged in various economic activities producing goods and services. These economic activities may be classified as primary, secondary or tertiary. So are you see that in definition are an area of the economy which business share the same or are related products or services. Economy are composed of four sectors. The primary involves the extraction and harvesting of natural products from the earth. Example, agriculture, mining and forestry. And the secondary sector student consists of processing, manufacturing and construction. Okay, secondary sector manufacturing and construction. And the tertiary sector provides services such as retail, sales, entertainment and financial sector is made up of intellectual pursuits like education. Now let's see student. First of all, one by one explain primary, secondary and tertiary. Now see. Student, this word is primary sector. Primary activities are directly student dependent on the environment as these refer to utilization of earth resource such as land. See in this picture student, land, water, vegetations, building, material and mineral. It does include pastoral activities. Student, you can see that in this picture fishing, forestry, agriculture, mining and quarrying. That is called the primary sector because it forms the base for all other products that are made subsequently is known as primary activity. Student, firstly my words is repeated कि primary activities are directly dependent on the environment as these refer to utilization of earth resource such as land, water, vegetation, building and material and minerals. Okay, primary sector exploits natural resources to produce goods. Okay, now next see example student. For example of primary sector in this picture show agriculture, this I am already discussed in this chapter. Firstly primary sector agriculture for natural resources, water, land, vegetation, fishing, farming, that is the primary sector. Now next secondary sector. Student, very simple words कि secondary sector change natural products into other forms through manufacturing. Okay, now repeated words, my words repeated. Secondary sector change natural products into other forms through a manufacturing sector. Secondary activities add value to the natural resources by transforming raw material into valuable finished product. These activities therefore include manufacturing, processing and construction, infrastructure industries. Natural products are changed into the other form. Again, natural products are changed into other form. Example student, yarn. This means Yarn means dhaga and cloth weaving from cotton. Since this sector is associated with different kinds of industry, it is also known as the industrial sector. And very simple example, student, using cotton fiber from plant, we spin yarn, weaving cloth using sugar cane as also as a raw material. We make a sugar good. Yes, we convert earth into bricks. Okay, since this sector is associated with different kinds of industry, it is also called industrial sector. Next, tertiary sector. These are the activities that help in the development of the primary and secondary sector. Student, very simple words ki tertiary activities include production and exchange of service like banking, transportation, communication, teaching also, student, nursing, etc. That is the mainly service, exchange of service, and that helps in development of the primary and secondary sector. It is also called the service sector as it generates services rather than goods, and the services support the production process. Example like student transport, storage and communication. Okay, now see in this picture, see personal service, ID service, insurance. Example of tertiary sector, banking and finance. Now tertiary sector, student, I am so many examples ki transportation goods that are produced in the primary sector need to be transported by trucks, train and then sold in the wholesale and retail shop. Student, only this word, these are the activities, only activities include production and exchange of service like banking, transportation, communication, okay, nursing, etc. Okay, banking just like borrowing the money from the banks, communication like talking to others on telephone, etc. Now see again example. Okay, now student, first of all student, ki the three sector are linked, but now increasing the role of tertiary sector and transition show in this picture ki level of country development, it improve specialization, but it's better to avoid the extending service part in economy over 40 to 50% of GDP. Why? Because the three sector are linked. Trade and transport establish a link between the producer and the consumer also. Like example, chemical fertilizer produced in the chemical factory are utilization in the agriculture sector. Okay, and in turn the farmers buy the products from the secondary sector and also use the service of the tertiary sector like banking. So in an economy, one or more sector may be more dominant and then the other in terms of total production and employment, and while other sector may be relatively smaller in size. So now the thousands of goods and services are produced and it is not possible to add all of them, but therefore economics suggests that the value of goods and services are rather than their actual number. Okay, in the initial stage of development, just like the primary sector, it was the most important sector of the economy, student. Again my words repeated, student, कि in the initial stages of development the primary sector was the most important sector of the economy. So our new methods of manufacturing were introduced the secondary sector and become more important in total production and employment, just like services in tertiary sector. So in the past decade, to the shift has now been to the tertiary sector in the developed countries. It is also seen in India. The reason why, because demand for basic service like hospital, education, institution, postal services and banks have increased, and this demand has also been due to greater development of the primary and secondary sector, so which now is require more service like transport, trade and storage. It is an improvement as the income level of the people has increased. They demand more services and a better standard of living like tourism, shopping, professional training, etc. तो नाउ स्टूडेंट कि आर यू अंडरस्टूड कि better living standard. Why? Because the good manufacturing, okay, good servicing and transition show कि level of country development and improve specialization. तो but better is to avoid extending service part in economy over only 40 to 50% of GDP, and globalization to introduce key new service into the market like information, technology and communication services. And what is GDP, student? Because GDP means ki the value of final goods and services produced in each sector during a year and provides the total production of the sector for that year. The sum of production in the three sector gives the GDP. GDP, it means full form gross domestic product of the country. So it is the value of all final goods and services produced in country during a year. So GDP indicate the size of economy as it market value of the final goods and services produced by all sector. Okay. So this is the main important role of a tertiary sector, student. Okay. Now, see, I am already discussed this part, student, ki GDP. What is GDP? The value of final goods and services produced in each sector during a year provide the total production of the country of that year. And the sum of production in the three sector gives GDP of the country. Okay. Now, GDP, this definition already discussed, but one word discussed कि measuring GDP is undertaken by the central government. Okay, this word is, student, कि measuring GDP is undertaken by the central government ministry with the help of various government department of Indian states and union territories. Very important GDP, student, क्योंकि it is the value of all final goods and services produced within the country during a particular year. Okay, and the sum of production in three sector gives GDP of the country. Now, student, the three sector are dependent on each other. First, primary, secondary and tertiary. Okay. Now comparing the three sector between 1973 and 2003. Now see, student, this graph 1 is show कि rupees GDP primary, secondary and tertiary sector. 1973 very less, 2003 is the tertiary sector is increases, secondary sector also increases and primary sector also increases. Now second graph, share of a sectors in GDP, and graph is GDP in show कि tertiary, secondary, primary sector is very developed and more increasing demanded. Yes, see, because the demand also will give due to greater development of the primary, secondary and tertiary sector. Like example, I am already discussed कि require more services like transport, trade, storage, and this graph already show कि 1973 and 2003 is the GDP increases. Next, employment share of a student, 1973 and 2000 increasing the tertiary sector also, secondary and primary. Why? Because the demand for the basic service like hospital, education, institutional and post service bank have increased. So the three sector are linked: trade, transport, established link between the producer and the consumer also. Like example, for chemical fertilizer produced in the chemical factory are utilized the agriculture sector. So it means that in the initial stage of development, the primary sector was the most important sector of the economy, and new methods of manufacturing were introduced. The secondary sector and become more important in total production and employment. That is the increasing for the tertiary sector. Because tertiary sector activities include production and exchange of service like banking, transportation, communication. Okay, now see. Thank you, student.